Nonprofit work, especially in 2026, isn't easy. But the good news is you do not have to figure it out all alone. You're invited to join me and hundreds of other change makers at Bloomerang's annual conference, GiveCon, coming up May 17th through 20th. And trust me, this is the place to be if you want to sharpen your fundraising and communication skills. I'll be there leading a session called From Passive Posts to Powerful Campaigns, Social Media That Drives Donations. If you've been wanting to turn your content into real conversion, you're going to love this one. But here's the part you don't want to miss. GiveCon's lowest registration rate is available right now for the next few weeks. This is the perfect moment to grab your ticket and save your organization some budget. Join me and an incredible community of nonprofits at GiveCon. Learn more and register at givecon.com. That's GIVECON.com. Now on to the episode. Hello, and welcome to Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Julia Campbell, and I'm going to sit down with nonprofit industry experts, fundraisers, marketers, and everyone in between to get real and discuss what it takes to build that movement that you've been dreaming of. I created the Nonprofit Nation podcast to share practical wisdom and strategies to help you confidently find your voice, definitively grow your audience, and effectively build your movement. If you're a nonprofit newbie or an experienced professional who's looking to get more visibility, reach more people, and create even more impact, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Julia Campbell here. This is Nonprofit Nation. Today, we're going to talk about transparency as a fundraising strategy, something that I firmly believe in. And my guest today is Brittany Hall, Senior Director of Equitable Access at Candid. If you listen to this podcast, follow me on social media, attend any of my workshops, you know I'm a huge, huge fan of Candid. And we're going to discuss how nonprofits can use Candid seals of transparency, something that's new and pretty exciting, and how we can really double down on accessibility and transparency as a sector, something I think is incredibly important. So, Brittany, welcome to Nonprofit Nation.
Thanks, Julia. It's great to be here.
So to get us started, can you tell us a bit about your professional journey and your role as Senior Director of Equitable Access?
Sure. So I come to this work with a really deep respect for the role the social sector plays in our society and the hard work of nonprofit leaders and staff who make that impact possible. I've been at the intersection of tech and social impact for I've heard that saying 15 plus years is the coded way of saying I've been doing this work for forever.
I like that. 15 plus. I've been doing it 15 plus years as well.
Yes. Since you used to have a .edu email address to get on Facebook, that's how long we've been thinking about this, right?
Yeah.
So across my career, I've kept seeing the same exact pattern. Organizations that are closest to the work often have the best solutions, but they're also carrying the heaviest administrative burden. They're operating on the smallest margins, and they're literally accomplishing miracles for folks that are benefiting from their services, yet they're still getting overlooked for funding. And so at Candid, my role as Senior Director of Equitable Access is meant to change that equation. I focus on making sure that nonprofits, especially smaller and BIPOC-led organizations, get meaningful access to the data, tools, and visibility that they need in order to accomplish their missions. The goal stays simple: less time proving legitimacy and more time doing the work that the communities depend on.
Yes, less time proving legitimacy. Let's just say it again and again. For anyone that's not familiar, although I do talk about Candid very often. Also, everyone go follow Candid on Instagram and TikTok. They do such a fantastic job. How does it serve nonprofits?
Sure. Candid is a nonprofit data organization that's built to make life easier and faster for nonprofits and funders to find each other. We were formed back in 2019 through the merger of GuideStar and Foundation Center, which some of your listeners might be familiar with some of our legacy organizations. But for the past 6 years, we've come together as Candid. And our mission is to get you the data that you need to do good. So at our core, we provide shared infrastructure so that the sector operates with clearer information and fewer friction points. And what that means in practice is that we maintain the most comprehensive data set of information on both nonprofits and foundations and grants in the US. So you can see where the money's coming from and where the money's going. And then millions of people use Candid profiles every year to decide where they give. And so the same data that's also in those profiles powers more than 200 giving platforms, including donor advised funds and corporate philanthropy tools. So it's a really centralized repository for everything that you need to know about how the social sector is operating.
I love that. It's all just so chock full of helpful, free information. I think it's just a real resource. So, we kind of took a little bit of a breath before we hit record. I mean, this is such a loaded question, but how is Candid managing this moment in history? Nonprofits suffering decreased funding, more demand for services, burnout, and just general despair, I think, from the news cycle.
Yeah, you're right, Julia. The social sector stands at a defining moment. And I feel like it requires both steadiness and responsiveness. Like you say, nonprofits are facing shrinking public funding, growing community need at the same time, as well as the nonstop pressure from the news cycle that's completely unpredictable. So Candid's responding in 3 ways. First, we're surfacing timely data so that leaders, advocates, funders can see what's happening in the sector in as near real time as possible. And with the rising tide of misinformation and shifting policies, organizations need to access accurate, reliable data to safeguard the communities and the causes that they serve. Yeah. So we're supporting and defending the sector by providing data and insights to shed light on the vital role that nonprofits are playing in our communities across the United States. Secondly, we're expanding our free access to fundraising tools. So that can help organizations diversify their funding streams, which is especially important for the many organizations who have previously relied on government support. And third, we're focusing on reducing administrative burden, and so that leaders can spend more time doing the work and less time worrying about funding it. Because when capacity is tight and the funding landscape is both competitive and unpredictable, the information really has to just work harder for you. And so that's what we're focusing on.
I love that. I think that the sector, like you just said, it's a defining moment. We're so tired of defining moments. It's like, can we stop having defining moments? Can we just do our work?
Ready for some unprecedented times, right?
I know. Also, who is the furry friend I just saw in the frame? People can't see.
Sakura. She's under strict lessons to be quiet right now, but I'm not sure how she's turning out.
Oh, a dog or a cat? I couldn't tell.
Oh, this is my golden doodle. She's
golden doodle. I love furry friends on this podcast. My last guest had a cat named Julia, so that's pretty exciting. Yeah, we just all need some levity sometimes. Absolutely. So I was really excited to see that Candid launched something called the 2026 Seals of Transparency. So what exactly, are these seals? What problem are they addressing?
Sure. The Candid Seals of Transparency verify that a nonprofit has shared key information. So we're talking about things like your mission, your leadership, finances, your program data, and even your impact data in a consistent and standardized way on your Candid profile. The seals exist because fundraising runs on fragmented information and repeated diligence. Smaller nonprofits pay the highest price for that fragmentation.
They do.
So the seal creates a shared standard and a baseline so that nonprofits don't have to keep proving themselves over and over again. And really, this is public infrastructure and not a marketing badge. The seal helps reduce uncertainty, but it doesn't replace judgment. So when you're earning a Candid seal, you're equipping your donors both on and off the Candid platform with all the information they need to decide to support your cause.
Okay. So why is transparency so important? I know transparency builds trust, but why does increased transparency lead to increased funding?
So it's simple. Trust drives giving, and transparency makes trust easier. So the data shows us that donors give an average of 62% more contributions to organizations with a seal than similar organizations that don't have one. 62%, Julia. That's huge. That's the
Wow.
difference between just keeping your lights on and expanding your programming. We're really excited that that finding holds true, even controlling for factors like the age and the size of an organization. All seal holders of all sizes receive 62% more contributions than not having a seal. The reason's kind of practical. Verified current information lowers risks and speeds decisions. So when funders or donors feel confident in the basics, bigger dollars move faster.
I totally agree. And is getting the seal something that's pretty easy for nonprofits to do?
So the seals are not designed to be an administrative burden. We don't want it to be just one more thing that nonprofits have to do. Instead, it's designed to be the one thing that then feeds everything else. So you earn your seal and you put your data in the shared infrastructure, and then you reduce your need for custom reporting across over 200 platforms. We know that time is such a precious resource for our nonprofit leaders. And so we've ruthlessly prioritized making the process as easy as possible. You begin by claiming your profile. And then from there, the seal achievement kind of goes in a sequence that mirrors the typical information that would be in every grant application you've ever had to fill out. So that's why putting it in once in the Candid profile and having it populate applications from then on out is where the real time-saving benefits come. So if you've ever applied for a grant, the chances are that you have all the information that you need to do this process to hand. And even if not, just collecting the information is a good practice in and of itself. So you start by earning your bronze seal. That takes about 15 minutes. And just reaching this level unlocks Apple Pay. And so reflecting on my own donation and shopping habits over the last decade, I've come to think of the bronze seal as like the verified badge. And then, of course, Apple Pay reduces friction at checkout. And so both of those things are kind of like what modern donors have come to expect. And then from there, each level going from silver to gold to platinum takes roughly 10 minutes additional. So the whole process, again, can take less than an hour. And then, of course, speaking of equitable access, our Go for Gold program is designed to make transparency even more beneficial for small nonprofits by removing cost barriers to access our most advanced fundraising tools. So here again, transparency is paying in tangible ways for small nonprofits who earn a gold seal. They receive free access to Candid Premium, which is our new fundraising tool that makes it really easy for you to see who's funding your peers and understand funders' grant-making decisions. There's also a couple of really cool new features in Candid Premium. So you can have dashboards that you can use to track your fundraising projects and prospects. There's an AI-generated funder recommendation engine, as well as an AI-generated LOI drafting tool. So it's designed to help you build your durable fundraising practices, increase visibility, and then also secure new funding opportunities without all the legwork. We're trying to make it as quickly and easy as possible.
Okay. So transparency, you've emphasized that it's most powerful when it drives behavior change across the system, not just for nonprofits. Could you expand on maybe what that looks like? What's that vision?
So fragmented data creates uneven trust, and transparency is what helps rebalance that. So while factors like having a development staff and fundraising budgets are linked to higher contributions, it takes money to make money. Any nonprofit can implement transparency. And so in that way, transparency becomes the most cost-effective strategy for credibility. It's a chance to showcase your impact without the need for expensive consultants or insider networks. The seal in itself signals to donors that your organization is professional, it's ready to engage and willing to be held accountable. And then, if I may get meta here for a second.
Sure.
When the baseline information lives in shared infrastructure, the burden of proof shifts away from individual nonprofits. And that matters most for BIPOC-led organizations, for example, who often face extra scrutiny. And so there's about 115,000 organizations who have shared their information in a standardized way through the Candid profile. And that allows Candid's research team to study the sector in an unprecedented way. And so, for example, Candid's researchers looked at all of that data and can confirm what many of your listeners probably already know. Majority BIPOC-led organizations have fewer financial resources. The findings found that median revenue for majority white-led organizations was 54% higher than for majority BIPOC-led organizations. In terms of total revenue for the sector, majority white-led organizations control about 5.5 times as much sector revenue as majority BIPOC-led organizations. Unfortunately, that mirrors what we're seeing across almost all facets of American society. So no real surprises here. But having that data, the hard, unbiased numbers to point to, allows us to make an impartial case for the collective, not just individual organizations, because all need equitable access to the capital that the data shows just isn't flowing to them.
100%. I think that's actually really interesting and super important. I'm not sure how long the seals of transparency have been available, but do you have any examples or stories of nonprofits using them?
Sure. So the seals of transparency have been around for a long time. Many of your listeners might be familiar with the GuideStar seal. Now that we're Candid, we're calling them the Candid seal of transparency. But same thing as the GuideStar seal that many are very, very familiar with. So we hear nonprofits all the time tell us about how much time they're saving having gotten their seal, and that really frees them up to think about relationship building, strategy, spending more time on their programs. I'll give you an example of an organization I support here in Charleston, our local animal shelter. Mm-hmm. And they have a platinum seal. And that gives them the same exact space and opportunity to present their organization's mission, vision, values, and impact as the national ASPCA. So while my Charleston Animal Society probably doesn't have the budget to license a Sarah McLachlan song or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Nor should they.
It's a real
that commercial is brutal.
But it's leveling the playing field in a really tangible way, because funders can see the exact same information across those two organizations, and they can make their case with the big guys, even though they're at the local level.
Exactly. So it's totally based on merit and not marketing budget, because we know a lot of organizations have, not a lot, but some organizations do have really huge marketing budgets and tend to get more attention. But this seems to be leveling the playing field a little bit.
Transparency is a really cost-effective credibility leveler that anyone can access.
Oh, I love that. Credibility leveler. So for me, I'm always trying to play devil's advocate or stick up for the small nonprofit that is sort of thinking about this as like, oh my gosh, just one other hoop to jump through. I know you addressed this a little bit, but how, does it cost anything? How are you removing cost or capacity barriers for the really, really tiny, maybe volunteer-led one-person nonprofits?
Sure. So I mentioned that 62% stat earlier, that organizations with a seal get 62% more contributions. That holds true for even the smallest organizations. And while we don't have that much more data on volunteer-run organizations, early indications is that it's actually even more valuable for small organizations. So you can invest 15 minutes to an hour to share your data, and it gives you a landing page in case you don't have a website. It gives you, again, the same credibility standards. And then additionally, for organizations that have less than $1 million in revenue or expenses, they can also get 1 year of free access to our prospect research tool, Candid Premium. And so you're getting visibility for your organization on one side, and then you're also getting visibility into funders on the other. So between the two of them, it's really a no-brainer to invest a little bit of time on a completely free service, and then really pay dividends to the tune of 62% more contributions.
So what is your sort of long-term vision for how tools like the Seals of Transparency can hopefully maybe shift the power dynamics in philanthropy and even maybe create a more equitable sector?
I spend a lot of time thinking about the power dynamics within philanthropy.
I know.
My long-term vision and wish for the sector is that we shift from this relationship-based gatekeeping, got to know somebody who knows somebody type of funding ecosystem to more readiness-based access. So funders can find aligned nonprofits. And I also believe that funders should bear the responsibility of trying to find aligned nonprofits. And then when a nonprofit is ready to receive the funds, they can indicate that or through their way that they are presented on the Candid platform and be able to connect with others. And I think that when those shared signals exist and nonprofits will spend like less time performing and jumping through hoops, and they could spend more time leading and focusing on things like their strategy and the needs of their community. Because that's where, their passion and their purpose really lie. It's not on this, repeated due diligence and applications and having the same conversations over and over just to prove yourself. Let's talk about what you're doing and who's benefiting.
Oh, this is great. That's so great. How can nonprofits be more transparent in their communications to donors? This is something I try to teach. This is something I talk about all the time. I really believe that transparency, and even I call it vulnerability, like being honest with what's happening in the organization, being honest with what's going on in the world, but also being very transparent about the operations. But how can organizations that might be uncomfortable with transparency get more comfortable, but also communicate this to their donors?
So transparency on the Candid platform always remains voluntary and configurable. So nonprofits control what they share and when. And that's really important, particularly in this volatile political and funding climate that we find ourselves in. So an equity-centered approach to transparency requires both visibility and safety. And so recognizing that exposure can carry some risks, some real risks now.
Yes.
We are doing everything possible. Again, our mission is the data that you need to do good, not the data that anyone needs to do bad. And so that is top of mind as we're, protecting organizations who would like to suppress their data. You can still earn seals by selecting to decline to state or that sort of thing, if that's something that is feeling vulnerable, particularly in this time. And the other thing I'll say about nonprofits, some of the organizations that we work with are, to your point, maybe a little hesitant to be transparent around things like budget. They've been making it work on a shoestring for so long. And there's this perception of, oh, well, if I post my financials, which, by the way, are ultimately public in the 990s anyway.
Right.
Funders or donors might think less of me because I don't have this huge budget. But I always advise folks is that's incredible that you've been able to do so much with so little. Don't hide that. Share. Look at this impact that we've been able to do here. Imagine what we could do with more. And then all of a sudden that perceived weakness is actually able to turn into something that you can point to as a positive proof point and, an additional cause for investment because you've been able to have such a great impact on so little.
100%. I feel like a lot of the nonprofits I work with, they are hesitant to talk about the need. They're hesitant to say, there's an increased demand for services. We had to turn, 20 people away this year or whatever it might be because they don't want their donors to look at them as a quote unquote failure or incompetent. But it's like you said, if they're transparent with what they were able to accomplish with so little in such an insane year or past 2 years, I just think that donors would really respond to that and respond to honesty. And they want to know what's going on the ground. They want to understand, they want to know that you're filling a gap, you're solving a problem, you are creating a vision for a better world. So however you can communicate that. So in a recent blog post, I love the Candid blog. Candid did address like the impact of lost federal funding. You talked a little bit about how Candid is supporting organizations through this moment. Can you talk more about, if someone is listening and they've lost a lot of their funding, or maybe they have, staffing turnover, they're just sort of struggling right now in this moment. How can Candid support them?
Sure. That's a question our team has been asking ourselves this past year is just how can we help? We are in a much better position than many of the other organizations that we serve because we weren't reliant on federal funding, for example. So that puts us in a better position to help. And so we've decided that the best way that we can support the sector is focusing on data, access, and advocacy. So our research team has published many public dashboards that are very interesting. Some of them show where funding cuts have been hit the hardest. Others quantify the economic impact of nonprofits. So you can search by congressional district to see how many folks are working and employed in the nonprofit sector or moment in time. So those are really great for big advocacy groups like the National Council of Nonprofits uses those when they go to the Hill. But then people in the community can also use them to reference when they're having conversations with their own congressional representatives. I think that information really becomes a stabilizing force during all of this uncertainty. So that's the work we're doing for the sector. But at the individual nonprofit level, our data shows that 30% of U.S. nonprofits receive government grants or received past tense. For more than 35,000 of them, those grants made up over half of their total revenue. So that's a lot of organizations, talk about the gaps in your budget. That's huge. And again, we shouldn't be hiding that in our narrative, but we've got some gaps to fill and quickly. So we have, around about this time last year, quickly spun up a curriculum that we called Funding Beyond Federal. And so this is available on Candid Learning, and it's made specifically for organizations who might have had grant writers, fundraisers who are really good at writing government grants. But
they're very hard to write, by the way.
Totally different than how you would approach an individual or a corporation or an institutional funder. So these resources help organizations take what they already have, whether it be materials or just fundraising skills, and then quickly pivot those so that they can diversify into other revenue streams. And then I'll speak to just one more that's an ongoing series. We've been using Candid's massive convening power to bring together organizations across the country who are working on a particular issue area. For instance, we had one on food insecurity. So these are organizations that are facing very similar challenges, rising demands, drastic cuts in funding, and they're able to share insights with each other. What's working in New York might spark an idea for someone in New Orleans, or someone in Houston's tried something and it doesn't work. Then someone in San Francisco doesn't have to spend their time testing that out on something that doesn't move the needle. Those have been really interesting. And what's coming out of it is just peer connections and community. In each of the topic areas that we've touched on so far, that's been the resounding answer that a lot of organizations are finding is we are being more creative about our partnerships. We're relying on each other more, sharing resources in order to get through this together. But this, as I mentioned, is an ongoing series. And so that's just one more reason to claim your seal and sign up for our newsletters and stuff. I can see that your organization might be working in a particular topic that we're going to be covering coming up, but if I don't have your contact information, I can't invite you to these type of opportunities. And so one more plug to get in there and get your seal. And we'd love to welcome as many perspectives to those conversations as possible, because we really believe that in unprecedented times, there's no opportunity to be a sage on the stage. We don't all have the answers, but we're all trying things in our own ways, and we can learn from one another.
This is why I really love organizations like Candid, because when you're working in the sector, we were just talking about how, my first director of development job, I worked in Virginia, and I felt so isolated. I didn't even really know what a director of development was. I read a lot of books, and then I found that being in community with other directors of development that I talked to, that I met through the Chamber of Commerce, through the local nonprofit associations, really helped me and really helped me realize that I'm not alone. And a lot of people are going through the same struggles nationally and internationally. So any way that nonprofits can collaborate and, like you said, be in partnership, I'm completely supportive of. So as we wrap up here, I like to ask my guests, Brittany, what is giving you hope right now?
Oh, wow. I think it's the leaders that I get to work with every day. I am so incredibly humbled and honored to be able to learn from all of the nonprofits that Candid supports. I see folks waking up every morning in the most challenging conditions that we have likely faced in our lifetime, and
in face of budget cuts and all of the stress that we're carrying both personally, professionally, and politically, waking up and still continuing to do good work, that's what inspires me. And I'm very, very grateful to be in this position where I can do all that I as an individual and Candid as a sector leader organization can to help us navigate this tide and really come out hopefully, stronger on the other side. And that's what I have to keep holding on to.
Oh, thank you so much. So how can people connect with you, find out more about the work, and most importantly, claim their profile for the seal?
Claim their seal. Yes. Visit candid.org. Start by claiming your profile, earn a bronze seal. It takes minutes. If you're a small nonprofit, I really encourage you, spend a couple more minutes to earn that gold seal. It pays out big time. Not only will you have up-to-date information provided across the sector, you can also get that access to Candid Premium. And then you can start using all of those time-saving resources. At the risk of sounding like a spam email, my final call is that this is the one free thing that you can do this week that will pay dividends. Literally 62% more contributions on average. So,
data-backed research that it works.
Yes. I'd encourage everyone to, carve out some time between now and the end of the month to invest in this one foundational piece of fundraising infrastructure that's going to pay in dividends for the rest of the year. And, for all nonprofit leaders out there, I welcome conversations. As I just mentioned, you are the folks that are inspiring me. Please find me on LinkedIn. It's Brittany Hall. Reach out to me. I want to hear your stories. I want to hear what you need. And we'll try to find all the ways that we can to help. We're in this together.
Thank you so much for being here. This was inspiring. We all need some hope in this moment, and we all need free resources to help us do our job better. So thanks so much for being here, Brittany.
Thanks, Julia.
Well, hey there. I wanted to say thank you for tuning into my show and for listening all the way to the end. If you really enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, and you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. I would love if you left me a rating or a review, because this tells other people that my podcast is worth listening to. And then me and my guests can reach even more earbuds and create even more impact. So that's pretty much it. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode. But until then, you can find me on Instagram at JuliaCampbell77. Keep changing the world, you nonprofit unicorn.